Welcome to the Multifamily Zone, where business meets family. We explore what the entrepreneur life looks like from the family perspective. Now here are your hosts, Julia and Gino Barbaro.
Hey everyone, this is Julia Barbaro, host of the Multifamily Zone podcast. I am here with my husband, the co-host, and the co-founder of Jake and Gino, Gino Barbaro. Hey Gino.
Hey Joel, how you doing?
Good. So what's our topic today? What are we talking about?
I don't know, but you look very flowery today. You look very Floridian today.
Yeah,
so the topic today, that's a good question. There's so many topics that we like to talk about on this show, but I think specifically what I want everyone to do is just to stop and reflect on any action that you've done in your life when you said it's not the right time. It's happened to me countless times in my life where I think something's not the right time. And then after I've done it, you're like, well, it was the right time. That's when you're supposed to do it. It's the right time, I think, when you're ready to do it.
Yeah. You know, I feel like when I use that term, you know, it's not the right time, I feel like it's me making an excuse for myself because I'm really afraid, you know, and I don't want to face whatever it is that I'm discerning or thinking about. And if I turn it around and look at it as an opportunity, if I do avoid that fear and actually step forward, well, what's going to come out of it? So what do you think?
I want to list off a lot of it's not the right time. And then I'm going to have my wife interject, jump in and say, well, you know what? I agree with you. Or I don't agree with you, because I have a lot of them. And I want people to relate to the ones that I went through and the ones that I'm currently going through, whether it's a family person, whether it's an entrepreneur, a lot of different areas of my life. It's always like, it's not the right time. The first one, the most obvious one to me that I can just completely relate to is it's not the right time to have a child. That one always resonated with me. And every time I had a child, it's like, it's not the right time. We got to go on vacation. I don't have enough money. And it's just like, and we've had 6 kids. We've been pregnant. My wife's been pregnant 7 times. And it almost seemed as if it was just not like, from a person who likes to plan things and all, it just was never the right time. So if you're planning on starting a family, if you're planning on having another child, these are one of the things in life where it ends up catching up with you, where you run out of time. I mean, there's a lot of things in life where you don't run out of time. You can be in your 40s or your 50s. You want to start a business. Starting a family as young as possible, it's great. It's wonderful. You have a lot more energy. You have a lot more runway. You can have more children if you like to.
I think it was good for us because we were that type, right? Where we like to plan and we like to be in control. So in a sense, it actually helped us grow.
I have to tell a really funny story because at least to me, it's really funny. One night we're trying to plan out to go to Italy and we're trying to get pregnant. And it's like, we thought like, the next month to get pregnant, right? Because it's how it was with us. And we just missed it. And I'm like, and I'm just thinking back to myself, always planning something. It's good to have a plan, but it's okay if the plan doesn't go right. And for us, it just didn't go right at that point, and we put off having children. And one thing that was weird for us is it seemed like a clockwork. Every like 28, 30 months, we spaced out our children, and we thought that was great because we didn't want to have too many close together. And looking back at it now, it would have been okay to have kids back to back. I mean, I know it's really hard in the beginning when they're really younger, but as they're getting older, our kids have such a great dynamic, and they're 3 years apart, spread apart, and they're close enough where they can still have a great relationship. But it would have been nicer to have another one in between.
I think it was perfect.
Do you?
Yeah.
Well, I would have liked to have another one in there. I mean, that's just part of the planning process and part of saying, you know what, it's not the right time. It's always the right time to have a child. It really is.
So I wanted to talk about leaving the restaurant a little bit because, you do talk about it quite often. But I guess what my point is that we could have stayed. We could have stayed because you were very comfortable with it. And, you could have used that in one hand, let's say, as a security, to hold on to that and also do the real estate. So what made you actually, when did you decide that it was a good time to let go of that and actually just full-time jump in?
Well, what I want people to understand, you don't have to quit right away. You can have a plan and have a runway. Like I've used that word already. when I bought our first property back in February of 2013, that was the start. All I was looking for was just a little bit extra money, a little bit extra passive income to help me pay the bills, because our family was growing, things were expensive in New York, and I never thought in my wildest dreams that I could actually leave something that I had done for over 20 years. So it's not the right time. It's never going to be the right time for me. That's the way I was looking at it. So then I went to coaching school. I got real clarity on what my situation was. And I think that's what people lack. They lack the focus and the clarity of what they want from their lives. And for me, it wasn't that I just didn't like the restaurant. It just didn't give me the growth and the contribution and what I was looking for. That's what really bothered me about staying at the restaurant. I was stuck. It was really boring. I had no adventure.
Yeah.
I was working 20 hours, working weekends, and I didn't like that. I didn't have control of myself, and I felt like it was a risky proposition. So I planned that for that first property. Let me go to coaching school. Then in coaching school, I said to myself, we can do this. We can wean ourselves off. And it's not the right time maybe today, but I knew down the road that it was the right time. I made that decision.
Yeah. So it sounds like you were getting knowledge. You were looking ahead in a sense where you're preparing yourself for the future. And that's why education is important, right? So a lot of people do your education, your real estate education. So they're preparing for the future. They're meeting people, so they're preparing for that. And that's so important, because when we sometimes when we say just jump into it, well, really, you really should have somewhat of a plan, right? You should be prepared in a sense and have that education. And there's so much education, like with the school. You go to college, you get your education, and then all of a sudden you go into the career of your choice, and you have no experience. So how do you get that experience? A lot of people are afraid to do things because they don't have experience. But how are you going to get it if you don't just get out there and do it?
I mentioned this on an earlier podcast. Everyone out there is pretty much winging it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the majority of us, we get a lot of students who get on the phone and they say, I'm afraid to call a broker. It's never the right time to call a broker, right? A real estate broker, to get information on property. You just need to do it. And you need to trust yourself that everyone has called a broker for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
We've all done it. And I still get anxiety or anxious when I call a broker, even though I've got 1,500 units, and you're still trying to make a connection with somebody on the other line who's never spoken to you. And you have to think of it from their perspective. They're speaking to somebody that they've never spoken to. They don't know who you are. So they have the same kind of anxiety speaking on the phone. Also, just be yourself.
Yeah. Well, go ahead. That's a good point, though, what you just said, because we tend to look at those other people and say, well, they know what they're doing. I don't know what I'm doing, but they know what I'm doing. I get that a lot with parenting. A lot of people think I have it all together, and I don't. And I feel like that if we just actually go ask the person, say, hey, tell me, when you call the broker, how do you do it? Give me an idea, or whatever it is that you're trying to do, because we assume everyone has it all together. We assume they know what they're doing, but they did start from where you are. So who can you ask? So that's the question. If there's something in your life that you're like, I don't know, it's not the right time, I'm not sure how to do it, I'm not sure how to move forward. Well, who do you know that is doing what you're trying to achieve? Go to them and say, listen, can we talk for a minute? I want to know how you started, what struggles you had, how you overcame them, and how you are successful with that.
I wanted to get back to, it's not the right time for leaving the restaurant. For myself. And I want everyone to think out there, if they're in the middle of leaving their job, starting an occupation, whether they're moving out of state, relocating, I want you to really think about the pros and the cons. What was the worst thing that could happen if I left the restaurant and I failed? I could always go back to the restaurant. I could always get another job.
You'd be living with your mom, remember?
Well, that was pretty bad,
which
right?
would have been fine. We get along. So it's okay.
In the short term, it'd be okay. But to have 6 kids and running around in chaos, I could always go back in the basement. But my point is, I could always go back into that profession. I could buy another business if I had to do that. So that fear of loss is what's holding us back. Well, what would I have lost? I would have lost a little bit of time. I might have lost money. But then for me, the fear of not trying was greater than the fear of loss. So try to put that in your terms. Is there more risk in your life, looking back at your life, not taking that opportunity, than it is just being comfortable and staying there? Tony Robbins says that, right? Where are you on the scale of 1 to 10 in being uncomfortable in your life? If you're at a 5, that's the worst place that you could possibly be, because that means you're just uncomfortable to be okay. If you're at an 8 or 9, you're really uncomfortable, you're going to try something. And if you're at a 2 where you're comfortable, you have no shot. So just try to gauge where you are in your life. When I was 35 years old, I was probably at a 2. When the Great Recession came in back in 2008, I was at a 6. 2011, I was probably at an 8 or 9. That's when I started to take massive action, saying I need to find an alternative solution to what I'm doing. So gauge yourself. If you're not ready, that's what spurred me to take that action.
Yeah, being in an uncomfortable situation or job or situation is so good for us. And, I know this is hard to think about, but, when we're in that situation, think, wow, this is great. What's going to come out of it? How am I going to get out of this situation? Because now I'm forced to do something. So now, if you can look at that instead of with like dread, you can look at it with excitement. This is going to be really a positive thing for you because you're going to be forced to do something. And so many times we're in such comfortable situations that we don't want to move. We just want to stay where we are. And then we don't move forward.
I'm going to mention Tony Robbins again. One of his quotes is, the quality of your life is going to be dependent upon how uncomfortable you can get. The more uncomfortable you're going to get, the more you're going to grow. And if you think about it, I could have stayed at the restaurant. I could have gone in Tuesday morning, cleaned the shrimp. I could have gone in Wednesdays, cleaned the chickens, and done that. And it's a really comfortable life. It's boring. It was no growth. There's no contribution. That really wouldn't have made my life any better. As I got more uncomfortable, as I started the Jake and Gino platform, as I started growing, as I started going to live events, as I started doing the podcast, as I started to reach out to more people, I'm really uncomfortable in that situation, but I grow. And I will tell you, the first time I was on camera, it was really terrible. Probably the 30th time I was on camera, I was really terrible. But you get better. And that's being uncomfortable. Well, I'm getting better. Every day is a different rep. So that's just what it is out there. You think everyone knows it and everyone knows what they're doing. We're all winging it out there. And especially with the way the economy is now and the internet, there is so much growth and learning and pain about, changing their algorithms and what platform to use and what to look for and how to do a sales thing. It's really complicated, but that's part of growing and part of being uncomfortable. And you don't have to do it by yourself. That's why I talk about the education. That's why I talk about, joining other platforms and investing in your education. It's really important that you do that, because if you're doing it all by yourself, you have no partners, it's going to be really hard to hold yourself accountable. That's why it's important to find people who are doing what you want to do.
Right. When you talk about before about, being on podcasts and all, that's another reason or excuse that we make that's holding us back. If there's something like that, we're afraid that we're going to look bad, right? So we don't do it. One of my biggest fears ever was speaking in front of people. Completely. I'm like, you have no idea. Yes, you do. Because you know what? I hear that it's most people's biggest fear. But so what? So what if you look bad? It's really not that big of a deal. If you have that attitude about it, then you'll do it. And then we also have that fear of making a mistake. Well, good. Make the mistake, because now you can say, okay, I tried it. I made a mistake. Now what am I going to do? What am I going to change? That didn't work. Now what's next?
So let me ask you, when you were talking in front of people, did you have a clear reason why you're doing it? See, for me,
no, that's a good point.
Thank you.
Okay.
For me, honestly, when I started doing podcasts, I was nervous. I was afraid, not afraid, but like I said, I didn't want to sound dumb on the podcast. So what I did, I overcompensated by preparing a lot, right? By getting a partner like Jake on the podcast with me. So we'd banter back and forth, and just by continually practicing. So every time I did feel uncomfortable, every time I have to go on stage and do a presentation, I know I'm doing it for the greater good. I know that I'm helping people out. And I know that I'm not coming from a place of ego, that I'm coming from a place of sharing and being completely genuine and getting better every time I do it. So there's a reason why I'm doing this. So why were you afraid to talk in front of people?
Well, I guess like what you just said, my message was unclear to me. And that's really all it was. Once I became clear, it's like, okay, I know what I wanted, what my message is. I know what I want people to hear because they can relate to what my life is. Then I started getting prepared. And that's all it was. It was preparation, education, preparation.
You should see her notes, man. She is prepared. I've got a couple little things scribbled here. She's got like notes and books over here that she's reading off of. So
thanks.
You're welcome.
So that's important. So when we're, when we are asked to present something ourselves and we're out in front of people, and if that's your fear, can you prepare yourself? You can prepare yourself more than you think. Yeah, you can write down your notes and everything, but you can also sit in front of a camera and record yourself and watch yourself. And I know it's painful because some people don't do it.
It's so painful.
Which I tried. Yeah, I'm very critical because I record him all the time. But yeah,
I'll tell you a story.
Yeah, hold on, let me finish. But that you will see yourself and you're like, oh, I hate that I do that. I'm going to change that. Let me change that. And then you start learning, and then you don't hate watching yourself so much. You're kind of used to it. But then when you go out, then it's like, all right, it's no big deal. I've seen myself. I don't look so bad, I guess. I don't sound so bad. But even if I did, so what? If my message is good enough, just do it anyway.
I was walking to the beach the other night, and I was preparing for a video that I had to do. And I'm not really great at sales videos. So I'm at the beach going, hello, everybody. My name is Gino Barbaro, one of the co-founders of Jake and Gino. We're a multifamily real estate education company that teaches students how to buy multifamily properties and become financially free. You see how I ripped that off? Because I literally 45-minute walk. That's all I said for 45 minutes. And I think people were looking at me like, what is this guy? What is this guy doing?
Good thing I wasn't with you.
But I had my hand gestures going. I was at the beach. People playing with their dogs. I'm practicing a speech. But I had a real reason why to do that. And practice and practice and practice is what'll allay that fear. Will make me less fearful, and I'll go through less reps.
Yeah. So, so that's the question. When we ask ourselves, if we want to do something and our reasoning is always, it's not the right time. That's really some time where you have to sit and think about, why am I using that excuse? Because it's usually just an excuse, and it's usually a fear of something where we don't want to face it, or it's too hard. It's too difficult to even, the thought of it is too hard. So in that situation, I always, talk to someone. Say, what do you think of this? Find someone that is a friend in your life, or a family member, or someone that you trust who is very positive, because that's important. Say, hey, listen, I'm thinking of doing this. What do you think? I need some advice or some encouraging words or something from someone. Because that can really help. If you're just sitting there thinking about it on your own, you're probably, and you're afraid, you could face it. But if you have someone to really connect with and really encourage you, I think it's definitely a good idea.
And I have another story, right? If call BS on yourself, because when you're saying BS to yourself. I had to go out to an event a couple weekends ago on a weekend. I don't like to travel, but that's not the real reason why I didn't want to go. I just didn't think that I would provide enough value to the people that I was speaking to. So I was able to talk to my wife about it, and she gave me the encouragement that said,
coached him. It was so funny.
I know, and we're walking the beach.
He was so
again,
irritated.
Right? I was, because I'm like, would you stop talking to me like that? Would you stop asking me questions? And it's like one of those things where literally I was like acting like a baby. Like, what's the worst thing that can happen? If I don't do good on stage, I know I'm really good with people one-on-one. I can give them value that way. So I just didn't know that I'd be able to fit in or be able to give value there. So I was able to talk to somebody. So maybe everyone out there can go out and take a look and hire a life coach and work through that, work through what your fears are, work through what your mental blocks are. There are the 4 energy blocks, right? The limiting beliefs, the interpretations, the assumptions, and that big one that my wife doesn't like to hear, but the gremlin, that inner critic, that's the biggest one. Those 4, where does it fall in? I had the limiting belief that I wouldn't be able to help people. And I think I provided a lot of value there. And if I hadn't gone, it would have been a normal weekend. I would have done whatever I had to do, but I had the opportunity to meet some really amazing people out there. I went out and I just gave a lot of value, and I heard from people speaking and learned from them also. So for me, it was a complete win-win. If I didn't get uncomfortable, if I didn't spend the time, the travel, I would not have experienced that. So stop yourself and call BS and get somebody on the phone and be able to talk through it with them.
Well, that's a good point too, because you're when you were not wanting to go, it was basically because you thought those people were like higher level than you.
Mm-hmm.
And that always makes me laugh, because they're just men like you. All those people out there that you're afraid to talk to, or you think that are better than you or whatever. They're just people. They're just people like us. And I think that's so funny when people get like celebrity. They see a celebrity and they don't know what to say. They're just another woman. You know what I mean? Another man, and they're just like us. And I you know, and that on its own helped me to overcome a lot of my fear back in the day. So that's just something to think about.
So I'm going to list off several of my, I guess, pivotal moments, and I want everyone to think about what theirs is. And I'm sure that some of mine are really going to relate to what you're going through in your life. For me, there's a lot here.
Can I jump in?
Yeah.
Okay.
For me, I've just got them down on a list of paper, but for us moving, you know, when we decided to move to Florida, I had a little illness. I could have said to myself, I'm not going. There's an excuse. But I had already made up in my mind, nothing was going to stop me from making this move. I could have stopped. I probably would have lost the momentum. We had a lease. We would have lost it. And then I would have to start all over. I could say, I'm not going to make this decision. I had both grandparents telling me that I'm crazy. I had everyone telling me that I'm crazy, but I did not want to stop. A second one.
But again, remember, we didn't just jump into it.
Oh, no, yes.
And that's important to know, is that we did prepare for it and research it and come down to Florida to try it out. We did prepare for it, which is important.
The second one was the children. I don't want to beat a dead horse, but everybody out there, it really is never the right time to have a child. There's always an excuse, whether you have a career going on or whether, you're not making enough money. And that was a big thing with me. I always thought, wow, I can't have any more kids. I'm not making enough money. Well, now I'm making more than enough. So that was an excuse for me. And even if you don't, you'll always figure out a way to support your kids and support yourself. Leaving the restaurant was a huge one for me. That one was hard. March of 2016 was my D-Day. I bought the restaurant in May 17th, 1994. Never forget it. I walked into it the first day. I was there for 22 years, almost full time. The majority of my life, adult life, working there. So you talk about something very difficult to leave. So when somebody says, I've been doing it for a while, I did that for a long time. Actually, I can trace my roots to the restaurant back to when I was 8 years old and my dad bought his place in Yonkers. I've been working in restaurants since I was 8 years old. So my whole childhood and adult life, I thought kids would go to work with their dad. That's what I thought, and go to a restaurant. So
it's funny because our kids thought everyone's dad had a restaurant.
Yeah, that's what I thought, So the next one was coaching school for me. Coaching school was really huge because that was another one of those, hey, Julia, I can't take 3 weekends off from the restaurant. It's June is really busy. They have graduations. I can't take that whole weekend off. And that was the stupidest thing.
Well, that was your belief that you had to be there. And it is important that you should have been there. I don't mean it, you weren't going on vacation weekly, but if there was something important like that, you were afraid to leave it because it was going to burn down or something. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So you really didn't need a push. And I'm really proud that you took that.
And I'm going to tell you, everybody out there, if you're considering going to a live event, we have one October 19th and 20th, and we have the Spouses Network there. And I'm going to try to make a pitch. But my biggest regret before I left the restaurant was I never went to a live event. The only one I went to was the coaching, which really revolutionized my life. But I never went to any real estate live events. I never went to any Tony Robbins live events. I never went to any of those live events. And that is my big regret, not going, because the thing there is you're not going to learn a ton. They might sell you on products and all, but the energy and the way you make network and the way you're with like-minded people, it will change your life. Spend a few bucks. It's another limiting belief. Well, it's going to cost me a lot of money. I don't have the money to get there. No, you need to get there. And then once you're there, you'll learn the techniques and the strategies, and you'll meet the people to make more money. So it's important that you get out to these live events. That was my thing. Was never the right time to do that. And I really regretted that. The next one is starting the podcast. Who's going to listen to Jake and Gino, a drug rep and a pharmaceutical guy and a pizza guy, starting a podcast? We only had 200 units, right? We're thinking you need to have thousands of units. You have to remember, just like when we started Gino's Family, there's a lot of people behind you that haven't done what you've done and want to achieve what you're achieving. So there's a lot of people that look up to you as a role model. So whether you have 10 units, whether you've done your first deal, or you've done your 100th deal, people will actually relate to you more when you have less units, because they're like, oh, he can do it. Now people might look at us and go, well, they have 1,000 units. They don't know how it is. So that was my other sticking point when I started the podcast. It was very difficult. The first live event back in November of 2017, that was a very challenging one for us because 175 people at a live event, we never did one before. We didn't know what we were doing, what to expect flying down there. My family actually didn't go. They were in Disney, so I was abandoned that weekend.
You didn't want us to go.
I
don't think we were
Is that
invited.
what it was? You weren't invited?
No.
Wow. I don't remember. It was, for me,
I think you were so nervous you didn't want us to.
for me, it was scary. I didn't
Yeah.
know what to expect. Looking back at it, I wish they were there. They came to last year's, and they're going to come to this year's event.
Mm-hmm.
And it was awesome. It was a great thing that we did that, and you learn from your mistakes.
Right.
I mean, we had the hotel room was not big enough. The room, we didn't do enough things right. We didn't have the badges, the sign in. But you know what? We did it, and you learn from that.
Exactly.
And we made mistakes in last year's, and we learned from that. And you're gonna constantly be learning.
Yeah.
But I think if you put your all into it, and people know that you're genuine, that you're trying, that's all that people care about. They want to care about that you put on a good event. You have great speakers. They get some great value from it. You get people together, network, and that was awesome.
Because in that live event, that first one that you did, the thing is, you could have always used that. You know, I don't think we're ready. I think we need to get more education. I think we need to get more podcasts going. I think we need to get more of a following before we, but you guys, you both did it.
And then there's a couple more real quick. The first book that we wrote, who's going to read my book? Wow, and now even the second book, we're coming out with another, The Honeybee in October. It's even that, who wants to read my second book? So the Multifamily Zone podcast, who wants to listen to us on the Multifamily Zone podcast? A couple other really big things that I think for us, hiring Josh. When I hired Josh on, I don't really have a product yet. We don't really have a platform yet. Is it the right time to hire somebody? That's a big one for entrepreneurs. When you're feeling stretched and you feel like you want to reach out, and you're really ready to break out, that's when you're ready to hire the employee. You might not have the money, but you always have to think of that employee is going to generate additional money for you to be able to pay him. So that's how you look at it. A couple other things. I think homeschooling for us, for me at least, was not the right time. Thank God we started when our daughter was in kindergarten, because if we had sent her to school, maybe we would have said, you know what, this is comfortable, let her go to school. And that's a really peer pressure one, because my mom was like, you're doing what? And it's funny because back in Italy, I don't know, that's
well, yeah. So homeschooling, I'm not promoting it, but I'm just saying, a lot of people are like, well, how can you do that? I could never do that. And just, it's funny that we have our babies, right? We deliver our little babies, and we teach them everything. We teach them how to speak, how to walk, how to eat, how to do everything. How
to swim.
Yeah.
How to ride a bike.
But for some reason, when it's time to read, we're not capable of it. Like, what is that? What is that about? And so that always makes me laugh, because, well, why wouldn't I be capable, even if I don't have a teaching degree? I taught this child everything that they know. Of course I can continue this. I know them more than anybody. Of course I can. So that is definitely a limiting belief, because, we are their primary teachers in general.
I think a couple of things when people look at their business, right? Because I want to throw some business into it also. Be aware, it's not the right time. When you start saying that in your business, I'll give an example at the restaurant. Delivery. I didn't want to deliver back 10, 12 years ago, but it was time, because our sales were going down, and that's something that I really didn't want to do, have to hire delivery people. I just did not want to do that. So, and even technology now, using the technology, having iPads at all the tables, having a POS system, that was such a struggle for us. So it's not when you're thinking it's not the right time, you're probably right that it is the right time, and that you're just going to have to pivot and do it anyway.
Yeah. Any more?
There's so many here.
Oh, okay.
I just want everyone that's listening just to think about their lives, and every time when you thought it was not the right time, give a couple instances when it wasn't the right time, but you did it anyway, and what came out of that. I'm sure a lot of good stuff came out of that.
Or even when you thought about that and decided it wasn't, and then didn't take that step. What did you miss out on? Because that's a lot of times we just look at the things that we miss out on, but we miss out on other things. Other people miss out on us. They miss out on our gifts and our presence and our knowledge and our experience. If my husband doesn't do his podcast, you all are missing out. And we don't look at it that way sometimes. We just think about what I'm missing out on, but other families are missing out on this podcast if we decided not to do it, because I was never prepared for this. My husband just pushes me to the point where I have to do it, right? So
I'm not that bad.
No, you're not that bad. I'm just playing it. Yeah. So that's like something to think about is other people are missing out on us. Maybe that's the family or whoever, but something to think about.
So I guess to wrap it up, if anybody wants to leave comments down below in the show notes of a time when you thought it wasn't the right time, but you did something anyway, and then really expand upon it and really paint a nice picture for yourself. So every time you're stuck against something, really to discern and to think of the pros and the cons. What happens if you do it, which is great. What happens if you don't do it? Because I know if I didn't move down to Florida, I wouldn't be able to walk with my kids every morning. I wouldn't be able to get on a golf cart every day. I wouldn't be able to ride bikes all the time. I wouldn't be able to go to the beach at 4 o'clock in the afternoon with my wife for half an hour. I wouldn't be able to do all these awesome things. And I would really have missed out on that.
Definitely.
So really focus on, what you want to do. It's about setting goals, right? We did the podcast on goal setting. Goals are about outcomes. I don't want you to just focus on the outcome, but fall in love with the process. I think my wife really likes to prepare for these podcasts. I think the goal is to have a really good podcast, but I think she likes the process of getting it ready, thinking about creating the podcast itself.
Well, it's getting your thoughts organized, right?
Yeah. And she likes that. So think about the process that you're going to implement, and then the goal, it's going to happen. If you keep working on the process and you keep practicing, it will happen.
Yeah.
The thing is, most of us stop at 98%. We've got to go to 110%.
Right.
That extra above the 100% is what's going to get you there.
And lastly, I think too, it's who's encouraging you. Who can you ask for encouragement? And I'm hoping that it could be your spouse. And if it's not your spouse, that's something to work on, because they're your number one cheerleader. You know what I mean? They should be there saying, "What are you trying to do? Let me help you. Let's overcome this together." And if that's not, I encourage you to work on your relationship, because you have that support at home, and we forget that, and we kind of look for other people out there for support when they're home with us all the time.
So you're saying get somebody to hold you accountable.
Yeah. Well, I'm encouraging everyone to find their spouse as that accountability partner.
Okay.
Don't you think?
Well, I do, because I use you as my accountability partner. You keep me straight, right?
Because I'm always encouraging like the spousal relationships and everything. It's important.
It is. I totally agree with that. So wrap it up.
That's
Anything
it.
else?
No, I think that was a good podcast.
So just like I said, leave us any notes down below.
And leave us any questions. I love to hear what you think and what you want to hear on this podcast. You can email Gino, or you can email me, juliabarbaro@gmail.com.
And then my email is gino@jakeandgino.com. Until next time.
Yes.
Have a great week, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.